Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank each of you for being here and giving us your insight. And I know, have many things we need to look at as we go back and review this and see where we are. And I'd like to start with Ms. Roberts, if I could. And thank you for your earlier presentation. I tried to squint as best I could to read the slide and follow that, but thank you for your time on that. Can you tell me what the practical difference is between the authority in sections 4 and 8 to develop information?
Sure. And my apologies for the small print on the slides, but I did want to try to fit everything into one slide so that people could sort of reference it back. So under Section 4, EPA has the authority to require testing, and I'm trying to find the exact wording, but if there is concern of an unreasonable risk for a chemical, that's one finding that EPA can make to issue a test rule, or if the chemical is produced or released into the environment in substantial quantities. That's the second finding that EPA would have to make in order to issue a test rule. It seems to me that the Section 8 provisions that currently exist give EPA that opportunity to collect that information. 8E requires companies to immediately inform EPA if there's a substantial risk on a chemical. 8C requires companies to provide EPA, upon request, information that they gather from their company. So I think that would make that first finding the significant risk. The second finding of production volumes are already collected under the chemical data reporting, which occurs every 4 years, or under Section 8A, should EPA decide they want to gather that information.
Okay, can EPA gather enough information under Section 8 to justify a test rule under Section 4?
It is my belief that they
Okay.
could, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I know Mr. Rosenberg had argued that CBI should be protected less and resubstantiation required for these claims. What are the issues that come with it?
I think we need to recognize that TSCA covers a huge gamut of different industries and different businesses. And so while the idea of resubstantiation on a certain periodic time may make sense for some companies, it may not for all. So for certain companies, for example, there may Coca-Cola comes to mind. They're not going to share their formulation ever. So if they had to resubstantiate that every year, and I realize it's not covered under TSCA, but it's the first example that came to mind, that would be very problematic for them. And again, keep in mind the type of information that's required under TSCA. Under new chemical notification, you have to tell EPA what the byproducts are, what the impurities are. That could be very meaningful information for a competitor because now they know what you're using to manufacture that. Volumes produced, again, could be very meaningful to a competitor to get a better understanding of what your market share is so that they may be able to glean into it. So again, CBI is extraordinarily important and really should not be taken lightly.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Mr. Gomez, if I may ask you, the acting administrator of EPA's Chemicals Office told you that the law makes it impossible for EPA to assess and regulate chemicals. How will EPA use its requested $67 million for this office in fiscal year 2013?
That is a very big question and a good question. And that's something that we'll have to get back to you on since EPA is not here, who could probably better answer it. But EPA, one thing that I do want to mention, though, is EPA has this new approach that I talked about in my statement. And so in this new approach, they are doing new things using the existing TSCA authorities. So one of the things that we talked about earlier already is they're extending those significant new rules uses where they've added a lot more chemicals that they're looking at. So they're trying different things to try and get more information. We noted that basically it's too early to tell whether that's going to be achievable or not, especially since in their strategy they haven't laid out some key elements that we think are needed for them to succeed.
Do you agree with that assessment that the resources are not there, that $67 million is not sufficient to do this,
I mean, that
or
is
how
what
it
the
may be used?
Sure, that is what the agency has told us also,
Yeah.
that it is a reason because of resources, but it's not something that we've looked at specifically to see if they have the resources.
And you'll have to give me a quick answer on this, but your testimony mentions EPA creation of a chemicals of concern list under Section 5B4 and the delay of this list at OMB. Could you please explain in very short order for me the specific understanding of and maybe the criteria for the may present clause, which either gets a chemical on or off the list?
Well, very briefly, that's something I'll have to get back to you on, but that list is still with OMB. It's been there for a while, so
I would appreciate it if you could give me a detailed answer to that.
we'll do that.
Okay, thank you very much. I yield back my time.